Hello friends, welcome to Behind the Shadows, a new way of telling stories.
The road stretched out before me, an endless black carpet under the pale light of the moon. The sound of the truck's engine was a solemn tune that harmonized with the nostalgic melody escaping from the radio. The old songs always brought back memories, a blend of longing and loneliness that accompanied me during the long hours on the road. Driving at night had its charm, but also a sense of isolation that sometimes felt heavy. Why do I keep doing this? I thought, as I rounded a bend. The silence of the cab was broken only by the music and the distant roar of the engine. I looked out the window, but the emptiness of the desert around me felt as hollow as my life. The thought that I could be home, surrounded by friends and family, crossed my mind, but I quickly pushed it aside. The road was my home now, and I had made my choices. Then I saw a figure by the roadside. I hesitated, my trucker instinct screaming not to stop, but something in the young man's expression made me change my mind. The figure approached, and his appearance was peculiar, almost ethereal under the moonlight. "Hey, can you give me a ride?" he asked, a nervous smile on his face. "Where are you headed?" I asked as he climbed into the truck. "To the nearest town. I need to get there before dawn." The urgency in his voice intrigued me. "Why before dawn?" I questioned, trying to understand what lay behind his plea. "It's complicated. We need to get there. You'll help me, won't you?" He looked at me with an intensity that unsettled me. "Sure, buddy. Let's go." I didn't know why, but there was something in his gaze that made me want to help, even if I didn't fully understand the situation. As I accelerated, a strange sensation began to envelop me. The radio switched to a sad song, and I could feel the memories of my youth surfacing. I glanced at Ethan, his name was Ethan, and noticed that he was staring at the road with a distant expression. "Have you ever seen anything strange on the road?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Strange? Like what?" My unease grew as he began to speak about visions and shadows that appeared by the roadside. I've seen things that made me question reality. Sometimes, I feel like the road isn't just a road. "Are you serious?" I asked, trying to grasp what he meant. "More than you can imagine." He smiled again, but there was something in his expression that made me feel like there was more to it than just words. The darkness around us felt thick, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to cross a line that couldn't be undone. The road seemed to shift before me, as if it were being shaped by invisible hands. The night sky, once filled with stars, was now a vast dark cloak, and suddenly, I spotted a house ablaze by the roadside. The flames danced frantically, illuminating a scene from a nightmare that brought back a tragic accident from my childhood. My heart raced as the memory sliced through my chest like a sharp knife. "Ethan, do you see this?" I asked, my voice trembling. He smiled enigmatically, not responding immediately. The firelight reflected in his eyes, and I couldn't shake the strange connection I felt between him and the haunting vision. "Sometimes, the past resurfaces," he replied, his calm tone contrasting with the storm brewing inside me. "You need to face what happened, Jack." "But this is a nightmare," I murmured, trying to look away from the house, but something kept pulling me back. "That house. It's where I lost my brother." Ethan tilted his head, his expression remaining serene. "You still carry that pain, don't you?" The pressure in my chest intensified, and anxiety began to consume me. I tried to ignore the growing sense of despair, but the urge to speed was overwhelming. "We need to go faster. Time is running out, right?" I asserted, accelerating the truck as the road seemed to warp beneath us. "Yes, time is an illusion here," Ethan said, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "But don't forget what truly matters." We passed a cemetery, and my gaze was drawn to the gravestones lined up like silent sentinels. The names of friends and family were etched in stone, and a wave of sadness hit me like a tidal wave. "Jack, are you okay?" Ethan asked, his voice now tinged with concern. Look at those names," I shouted, pointing at the gravestones. "It's them. They were all part of my life." He watched me closely, and a shadow of sorrow crossed his face. "Sometimes, you have to remember to move forward." Tears began to well in my eyes. "I can't, Ethan. I can't bear this." "But you must, Jack. Each of them is a part of you, but you can't stay trapped by them forever." Those words echoed in my mind as the road stretched out before us, leading us to an unknown destination. My hand trembled on the steering wheel as the path unfolded ahead, each mile feeling like a labyrinth with no exit. The air inside the cab was thick, as if the very atmosphere was aware of what was about to be revealed. I glanced at Ethan, who maintained a calm demeanor despite the growing storm in my heart. "Ethan, what's happening? What do you mean by limbo?" The question slipped out almost as a whisper, but its weight reverberated within me. Ethan turned to me, his piercing gaze as if he could see through my soul. "Don't you realize, Jack? You're caught between two worlds. Here, on this road, you're reliving your past, confronting the parts of yourself you never had the courage to face. We need to reach our destination before dawn." Those words echoed in my mind. Limbo? Was I dead? The reality hit me with the force of an out-of-control truck, and I felt as if I were trapped in a nightmare. "But what do you mean? I can't be dead. I'm here, driving, talking to you." My words spilled out in a whirlwind of denial and desperation. "You may not remember, but your life was interrupted. What remains is just a final journey," Ethan replied, his voice calm like a breeze on a summer night. "The road ahead is your last chance to be free." Suddenly, the landscape began to change again. The dashboard lights started to flicker, and the road ahead transformed into a dark tunnel. The air grew colder, and a sense of panic began to settle in my chest. "Ethan, what's happening?" I shouted, feeling as if I were losing control of the truck. "Focus, Jack," he shouted back, his voice steady. "Look for the light at the end of the tunnel. Don't give up now." I followed his gaze and saw a bright, almost celestial light approaching. But the darkness around us seemed to want to swallow me whole. The truck swayed, and my heart raced. "I can't control this." My voice was a mix of terror and frustration. "You need to trust yourself. Remember, all of this is part of your journey," Ethan said, his presence reassuring amid the chaos. The light appeared stronger as we drew closer, and I had a feeling something monumental was about to happen. But before I could process it, we emerged from the tunnel, and the road lit up, revealing familiar figures along the way. My heart sank as I recognized faces I hadn't seen in years, their smiles seeming both distant and so close. "No. It can't be," I murmured, reality shattering around me. Anguish hit me like a wave, and despair took over. I couldn't go back, I couldn't change what had happened. The road ahead reflected my past, and I was surrounded by those who had already departed. The tension in the truck was palpable. The sound of the engine mixed with a symphony of memories, each one more painful than the last. I could no longer ignore what was happening. "Ethan, what does all this mean? Why are we seeing these things?" I asked, forcing my voice not to betray the fear consuming me. He turned to me, his face illuminated by the dim light of the dashboard. "Jack, you need to confront your regrets. Every vision you see is a reflection of something you haven't resolved." His response made sense and, at the same time, felt like a sentence. I didn't want to face anything. The pain was unbearable. The road ahead began to shift once more, and suddenly we found ourselves in front of an abandoned amusement park. The lights flickered intermittently, as if the past was trying to manifest itself. The smell of popcorn and cotton candy lingered in the air, a distant echo of happiness that once existed. But upon closer inspection, I saw the rusted rides and broken attractions. A knot formed in my throat. I lost a friend here," I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. The memory of a terrible accident surged to the forefront, and guilt hit me like a punch to the stomach. I could have done something to save him. Ethan looked at me with a serious expression. "This guilt you're carrying, Jack, won't let you move forward. You need to confront it. What do you know about that?" I shot back, frustration seeping into my tone. "You don't know what it's like to lose someone and feel like it's your fault." "I know more than you can imagine," he replied, his voice soft yet firm. "You need to let that weight go." As we talked, something caught my eye. In the distance, I saw a familiar figure. My heart raced. It was my sister, who had died years ago. She stood beneath an old oak tree, a sad smile on her face. "Jack," she called, and hope and pain intertwined within me. "Ethan, I need to stop," I said, gripping the steering wheel. Urgency consumed me. But Ethan held my arm, preventing me from acting. "You can't interact with the dead, Jack. It will trap you even more in this limbo," he warned, his voice filled with a contained desperation. "But she's my sister. I can't just ignore her," I pleaded, the internal struggle taking hold of me. Seeing her was a beacon in the darkness, and I desperately wanted to reach her. "Confronting your regrets is what matters right now. If you stop, you may never come back," Ethan insisted, his eyes locked on mine, filled with a sadness I didn't fully comprehend. I felt the weight of the choice before me. The road continued to stretch ahead, but I was torn between the desire to embrace my sister and the need to move forward. The tension in the cabin was so palpable I could almost touch it. The truck kept rolling, but I knew this journey had only just begun. The road seemed endless, and with each turn we took, I felt the weight of the visions piling up around me. It was as if the truck was carrying not just my body, but all the memories I had tried to bury. "Ethan, what's happening? Why am I seeing all this?" I asked, my voice trembling, as images of my life flashed before my eyes like a high-speed movie. Ethan looked at me with those penetrating eyes, his expression both serene and concerned. "Jack, every vision you see is a part of you that needs to be confronted. You're in the limbo between life and death. This is your chance to resolve what's been left unfinished." He said this as if reciting a lesson he already knew by heart. "Resolve? As if I could just choose to forget all of this." I shouted, frustration taking over. "How can I move on when all I see is a reminder of what I've lost?" "You don't need to forget, Jack. You need to accept it," Ethan replied, his calmness almost irritating. "The last stop is a choice. You can say goodbye to your sister or move on. You have to decide." His words echoed in my mind as the landscape shifted again. A clear vision appeared before me, my sister, smiling but with sadness in her eyes. The urge to go to her was overwhelming, but the fear of being trapped in a past I couldn't change paralyzed me. What if I let her go? What if I never get the chance to say I'm sorry? I murmured, my voice low. "Sometimes, saying goodbye is what we need to move forward," Ethan insisted, but my hesitation still consumed me. The truck seemed to hesitate as well, as if it could feel my anguish. "I need time, Ethan." "I don't know if I'm ready," I replied, the internal struggle eating away at me. "Every second that passes is 1 second less. The sun will rise, and you need to decide," he said, urgency growing in his voice. At that moment, the dashboard lights of the truck began to flicker, as if trying to tell me that time was running out. I looked out the window and saw the road ahead fading into deep darkness. "Look, Ethan, I can't just ignore everything that happened," I said, helplessness turning into despair. "Jack, you're not ignoring. You're freeing yourself. You need to do this for you and for your sister," Ethan replied, his words resonating like a distant echo. And then, in a moment of clarity, I knew I couldn't keep fighting this battle. What I wanted more than anything was peace. And with that, I decided I needed to talk to her. "Okay, I'm going to her," I said, my voice firm, though my heart raced. "I need to say goodbye." With newfound purpose, I steered the truck toward the light emanating from my sister's figure. The road ahead lit up, and for a brief moment, everything seemed right. I was still reeling from the vision of my sister, but the urgency of the situation began to pull me back to reality. The truck shook beneath my feet, and a sense of despair grew within me, as if the road was crumbling away with every passing second. "Jack, you need to decide now." Ethan's voice sliced through the heavy air, but my attention was fixed on his familiar figure in front of me. "I can't leave you like this," I murmured, my eyes locked onto his sorrowful expression. "I should have been there for you. I'm sorry for everything." What I didn't know, however, was that this conversation was about to transform into something much deeper. He looked at me with a serenity I didn't expect. "Jack, you need to stop blaming yourself. Things happen the way they were meant to. I'm at peace." His words echoed in my mind like a distant reminder of a truth I had always known but never wanted to accept. "But I haven't lived. I haven't done anything with my life." Ethan was squirming in the driver's seat, his anxiety mounting as the road grew more unstable. "You don't have much time, Jack," he shouted, his voice rising amidst the chaos. I looked at him and saw his form starting to distort, as if reality was disintegrating. "Choose, Jack." Ethan's voice merged with my sister's, and a deep fear engulfed me. The road beneath us began to crack, and every fragment that fell seemed to take a piece of my soul with it. "Don't leave me, please," I pleaded, but my sister only smiled sadly. "You need to set yourself free, brother. If you stay trapped here, you'll never know what it truly means to live." It was in that moment I realized that the choice wasn't between staying or leaving. It was about accepting who I was and what I had left behind. I looked at Ethan, and the distortion on his face intensified, revealing a version of myself, aged and filled with regrets. You are me?" I stammered, horrified. The truck began to plummet, and darkness enveloped us. "I can't stay trapped in this," I screamed, and with a surge of clarity, I made my decision. I choose to move forward. The words came out as a whisper, but they carried the weight of all my accumulated pain. Ethan's image dissolved into shadows as the abyss drew closer. And then, at the moment everything seemed lost, a bright light shone before me, like a beacon in the storm. The truck fell into darkness, but instead of fear, a wave of peace washed over me. And as everything faded away, I knew